Okay, very exciting day. We are starting the last daf of Masechet Yevamot. Again, just a few quick announcements, just so everybody's clear on what's happening. We're only doing the first part of today's daf. So just to make things clear to everybody who's listening in all different kinds of ways. So the English Siyum will be taking place on Sunday night. At that point, if you normally learn and you get the links every day through the WhatsApp groups, first of all, if you don't get links every day through WhatsApp groups and you want to, you can register on the subscribe page of our website. If you do that, so on Sunday evening, after the Siyum is over, Sunday evening, Israel time, on that same post will be the link to the audio, to the video, to the YouTube. We'll have both. It'll just be in two parts. And then you can listen to one section and the second section. So that should make it clear for you. It could be over time. So if you're listening to this a few years later or a month later, I might just combine everything and edit it. We'll see, but might end up turning into one eventually. But for right now, to keep things clear, there'll be two separate audio places to play the audio. It should be made clear. We'll make it clear on the website. And there'll be two video links, one with the Siyum and one with today's daf. As of today, you'll just be watching and listening to today's. It'll look like a normal daf post. It'll just end early. Okay, it'll be a shorter daf and it'll be only till the bottom of Amud Aleph. Okay, registration for the Siyum, if you register, you should immediately get an email from, I think it might even come from Zoom. Can someone confirm that? Is it an email that comes from Zoom? Okay, it'll be an email from Zoom. So if you don't find the link from us, it's because it's not coming from us. It's a registration through Zoom. You get a direct link from Zoom and everyone has their own independent link. If you go in with someone else's link, you'll basically go in as that person with their name, not with their video. Okay, I think that's it for announcements. Today's daf is sponsored by Elisheva Gray. Toda Rabba Rabbanit Michelle for patiently guiding us through this challenging Masechet, and to everyone on the Hadran team for providing so many resources to help us along the way. Mazel tov to all of my fellow learners. We made it. It's exactly my words for today. Very exciting to be almost there. Today's daf is also sponsored by Caroline Ben-Ari in appreciation of Julie Landau. When I was ill recently and needed to be hospitalized, Julie was there for me with practical help and emotional support, including going with me on 2 different days to the ER and advocating for me when I no longer had the energy to advocate for myself. I am blessed to have a friend like Julie. We're glad that you're out of the hospital, Caroline, and feel good. And just to mention 2 more refuot shlemot that are ongoing, one from this week's learning, Shlomo ben Rachel, and to our dear friend Phyllis Hecht, Gittel Peshabat Masha Rachel. Okay, refuot shlema. Okay, we are going to start 3 lines for the bottom of Kuf Chaf Aleph Amud Bet. We were in the middle of discussing Gentiles and their testimony and how can their testimony be accepted. We ended with 2 different approaches yesterday. There's basically 3 options. One is for sure not a possibility, and that is a Gentile testifying in court. Okay, if they come to court and say, I'm testifying for this woman to allow her to marry. Okay, I didn't specify that when I said it. What I meant is a Gentile testifying in court to permit a woman to marry by saying her husband died. We do not accept it. If they testify in court that the person died without specifying they want the woman to get married, that was a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, whether we can accept it. And then we had Masiach Lafi Tumo, which everybody agrees that if in the context of a conversation or something they mention that someone has died, we generally accept it. However, today we're going to see that that's not always clear, because if we suspect the Gentile of having a reason to be not telling the truth here, then we don't believe them. Okay? So that, again, all of this has to be understood in the context of a Gentile in those days. Again, what we're going to see today is there's different types, okay? So if, we often say it, even though you don't always see both sides, today you're going to see both sides. You're going to see Gentiles who wanted to kill Jews versus Gentiles who actually not only, right, they took care of Jews and they buried them when they died. So there you see it in front of our faces, all different kinds. But again, the halacha, and we've been discussing this a lot recently, has to, and that's always the question, how much do we have to worry about people who are more vindictive? And here we're going to have clear indications about whether they're telling the truth or whether they're not. And the rabbis, or maybe not clear, but somewhat, okay? And the rabbis are going to decide in each case whether we believe them or not. There was a Gentile who said to the Jew, cut this fodder from the ground, right, which you're not allowed to cut on Shabbat, give it to my animals, And if not, I'll kill you. Okay, obviously not a very pleasant gentile. Vilo. And if not, I'll kill you like I killed somebody else. Who did I kill? Well, I killed this guy. I told him to cook something for me on Shabbat. He wouldn't do it. I killed him. Well, Shama Debitu, the wife of this guy that he mentioned that he killed him, was standing nearby. Now the question is, do we believe him that he really killed this person and allowed this woman to get married? So she immediately, her husband's been missing in action. We don't know where he is. She goes in front of Abaye and she says to him, hey, did you just hear what he said? He said that, maybe he didn't hear, but I just heard him say, in the context of threatening somebody else, that he killed my husband. So Shehita Tlatarika, he waits 3 holidays. Why did he wait 3 holidays? Well, he was waiting to find rabbis who he can consult with about this. And the rabbis, often on the regalim, they got together on the holidays. So he waited till there were enough Talmidei Chachamim to discuss this issue. Amar le Rav Bar Ava, Zil lekamei to Rav Yosef. So Rav Bar Ava says to him, go in front of Rav Yosef. His knife is very sharp, which is a way of saying his brain is very sharp, and he'll know what to do. So she goes before him, Pashat Mehamatnita, and he explains from the following Braita, he gets to his answer. What's the answer? Ovei kochavim shaya mochil perot bashuk, va'amar perot halalu shel or lahem, shel azekahem, shel neter revayehem. Okay, this is a totally different topic. Somebody, a gentile, is selling fruit in the market, and he says, these are orla. Now, he doesn't use the word orla, because orla is a halachic term. Orla means there were 3 years within the first 3 years. What he wants to say is, this fruit is from a young fruit tree, meaning it's the best fruits, even though it's actually not exactly true that the fruits from the first few years are the best, but he wants to say this isn't an old tree. There's shel azeka. Okay, what is azeka exactly? Rashi says it's mipardes me'uzak, that's kept up properly. The geder saviv lo l'shamro, and it's shnat shvi'it. He claims it's a shemitah thing. Okay, and then if the Gentile says this, everything's going to be forbidden to us. Okay, or neter revai, where it has to be eaten in Jerusalem. If it's shvi, it has to be eaten in it's special care. All these things, whatever they are, okay, they'd be forbidden to a Jew if we relied on his testimony. Lo amar klum. We ignore what he said. Why? Lo nitzkaven ela lashpiach mikra. He used this terminology, whether he even said those words, or he just said it's a young tree, it's from the first 3 years, it's from the 4th year, it's from a zeka. He was trying to say, my produce is the best. Now, okay, this reminds me when I was much younger, I was living in Jerusalem, and I went to find an apartment to rent. And there were these lists, like you pay a little money and you get a list, and every day they'd update with new ones. And I went to this apartment that said it was renovated, newly renovated. Okay, I went to this apartment. It was so not newly renovated. Okay, I don't know what they were talking about. And this is what happens when you advertise. Everybody knows in advertising, you say things that aren't really true. You're just trying to get people to buy your product. So here we have this situation where we don't believe him because he clearly has an ulterior motive. Now here it's interesting. We're being much more lenient here because we're saying, don't assume that, excuse me 1 second. Sorry. So don't assume that this person is, sorry, I lost my place. Okay, don't assume that he's telling the truth because we're assuming that he's just trying to sell his product. Now, what was the case here? He wasn't selling anything, but it's the same idea. He has this person that he's trying to threaten to do what he wants to do. And in threatening him, he says, I'll kill you. And if you don't believe me that I'll kill you, well, I killed so-and-so. So it's not clear that he really killed the person. He's just trying to threaten. So therefore, that woman can't get married upon that testimony. So again, what is Mesiach Lefi Tumo? Mesiach Lefi Tumo is where he's speaking without any ulterior motive. He's mentioning something, and that's exactly what we're trying to get at. Why is this different? Because he's saying it, and it's usually Mesiach Lefi Tumo means not in court, just in context of conversation. But you have to be sure that they're telling, that we can assume they're telling the truth and that they don't have any reason to lie here. So there's another factor within Mesiach Lefi Tumo that would then not allow this to be acceptable testimony. So in this case, and by the way, for those who wrote, I saw in the chat, you said, well, it's unfair that Abai pushed her off for for a year or a few months. And it's unfair, but probably Abai felt the same way, but wasn't. Often rabbis, if they think it's a problem, they'll say, well, I'm not willing, let's wait and see, maybe someone bigger than me will permit it. And in the end, they couldn't permit it because it really was very likely that the Gentile was just lying. Now we're going to get the flip side, okay? Other cases. Okay, so there was a Jew and a Gentile walking on the path. He said too bad about this Jew that was with me on the path. He died and I buried him. And they married his wife. Another case where people were going on the path, there was a group of people going to Antiochia. A Gentile came and said, too bad about this group of people that died, and I buried them. And he see it in Shoteim, and they believe this testimony to allow their wives to get remarried. ובאו וכוכבים בעמל, חבל על 60 בני אדם שהיו מלכים בדרך ביתר, שמתו וכברתים והסיעו את נשותיהם. Just one second. Sorry. Okay. So now we have this case of people. There were these 60 people that were in a group. So now that they have these 60 people, he said, oh, I was with this group of 60 people and they all died on the way to Beitar, and I buried them. And then they allowed their wives to get remarried. So you see all these cases where these Gentiles, first of all, not only were they believed, but they even buried the people, right? So here you have Gentiles that were nice to the Jewish people, took care of them, right? And then those people had no reason to lie about this. I mean, you might say maybe they were trying to make themselves look good, that they buried all these people, but unlikely. They would say the group of 60 people died and I buried them all, and they were lying. So again, it really depends, even within Mesiach Lefi Tumo, which means they're not coming to court to testify. In the context of a conversation, they're mentioning something, you can't always believe them. You have to look and see, maybe they have some other agenda. Okay, moving on to the next Mishna now. This is a Mishna that talks about other leniencies about, again, trying to permit women to get married when their husbands are missing. So if someone said, I saw it only by candlelight, I saw that he was dead, or I saw it by the moonlight, which again is not a very strong light, we can believe them. Okay. Bat kol usually is a heavenly voice that comes down, and we've seen a bat kol here and there. So this is a little bit strange. Here it doesn't mean a heavenly voice. Okay. Here it means if you hear someone saying so-and-so is dead, you can believe that. Okay, just by hearing someone, even without really seeing them. And I say without really seeing them, because we're going to see the Gemara is going to try to understand this a little bit better. How could you just listen to a voice? Who knows what that voice is, who said it, etc. They're going to suggest some things that you might not have come up with on your own. And sometimes the Gemara asks good questions that you would have come up with on your own. Here, I'm not sure that you would have suggested this, but in any case, we'll get there very shortly. Now the Mishnah tells us there was a case of a person that was at the top of a mountain, so meaning nobody was around. He said, this person, the son of this person from this place, so make it really clear who it was, died. And they heard him say this. They didn't really see him. So they went to search for a body. They didn't find a dead body. And they permitted his wife to get remarried. And there was another case in Salmon, right? You see again, case after case after case here, real cases going on. So now there was another case in Salmon. Ani ish ploni, ben ish ploni, nishachani nachash v'harei met. They hear this guy saying, okay, someone said, I am so-and-so, the son of so-and-so. I just got bitten by a snake and I'm about to die, right? He wanted people to know who he was. Obviously, they didn't recognize him, or it was dark or whatever it might be. And he said, I'm about to die. So that when he died, his wife would be able to remarry. When they found his dead body, nobody recognized him. See what to show, but despite that, because he said what his name was, they went by his testimony and they married off his wife. Amar Rabba Bar Shmuel. Okay, even though right, lo kiru, I think could be understood in two ways. It could be understood as either they didn't identify him as that person, or they didn't know for sure that this was the person who had died, maybe. But I guess it was probably that they just didn't recognize it. Yet they went by his voice and what he said. So the first thing is Amar Rabba Bar Shmuel Tana. There's a bright that says our halach in the Mishna, the Messiino Pibatko. Oh yeah, that's also, thank you, that the bite disfigured him. And because of that, he looked very different and they couldn't identify who it was. Okay. Tana Beit Shammai omrim ein Messiino Pibatko, uBeit Hillel omrim Messiino Pibatko. Rabbi Bar Shmuel tells us that the halacha in the Mishnah is a machloket Beit Shammai Beit Hillel. Beit Shammai actually doesn't agree that you can listen to a voice. You can't paskin by a voice that says so-and-so died. If you didn't see the person, didn't see who was saying it, didn't see, that's not enough. So the Gemara says, "My kamashmalam matnitinhi." Why are you telling us this? Beit Hillel says it's okay, and we hold like Beit Hillel, and that's our Mishnah. So why do you need to tell us that Beit Shammai disagrees? Okay, forget about Torah that we like to learn all the different opinions, but the question is really, why is Rabbi Bar Shmuel quoting this to us? So hakamashmalan diimish takachat stama deimasiin Beit Shammai. If you were to come across a braita that says you can't marry al pi abat kol, don't worry, you can ignore that braita because that braita is Beit Shammai's opinion. This is very important because, again, what shows here is they were really trying to make sure that in every way possible we could try to get these women married. And they don't want anyone to start being stringent in ways that there's no need to be stringent. So they're worried that if somebody hears a braita that says they can't, maybe they'll think we can't go by a voice. And therefore, he wanted you to know, yes, it's true. There were some people who thought this way back when, but they're Beit Shammai and we don't hold by them, so you can ignore it. Next, halchu v'lo matzu. I told you we're going to be worried that maybe this voice was coming from somewhere else and not from a reliable person. Well, the Gemara is going to suggest v'dilma shade hava. Maybe it was an evil spirit, a shade. Okay, we've talked many times about shadim and evil spirits. Maybe the voice is coming from an evil spirit. Now we're going to learn about how do you detect when you see a shade, if it's a shade or a person. So this is going to be very valuable information for you. So now they say, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav shera'u lo demut adam. He appeared like a person. That's how I know. Shadim clearly don't appear as people. Well, maybe they do. To which the Gemara says, no, inu nami damu. By the way, you see here that they didn't really know how shadim appeared. But now they're saying, maybe a shade also could appear as a person, or maybe they're stating that shadim do appear as people. Okay, shadim come in the form of humans. So the fact that I saw from far away at the top of this mountain a person speaking, okay, so who knows? Maybe it was an evil spirit, and then obviously they were trying to trip us up, and I can't believe them. So now they say, okay, I saw a shadow. Evil spirits don't have shadows, only humans do. To which the Gemara says, Inunami ilu bavur. No, also evil spirits have shadows. There's a shadow of a shadow. Sometimes our shadows make another shadow. Okay, there's a shadow and then a shadow of the shadow. So they say, they don't do that. So they say, Dilma ledidu ilu bavua de bavua. Now this one's already a little different. There, the other one said, it's clear. They come in the form of humans. They have shadows. Now they say, well, maybe they also have shadows of shadows. Already, the Gemara is not sure about this one. So Amar Rabbi Chanina. Now, where do we get information about shadim? The best way we get information, and this happens sometimes in the Gemara, is someone who has a conversation with an evil spirit. So says Rabbi Chanina, Amar li Yonatan Sheda. The shade named Yonatan told me one day, that they have shadows, but they don't have shadows of shadows. So now we've learned how to identify a shade. If you see someone who has a shadow, but not a shadow of a shadow, then maybe they're a shade. Okay, so the Gemara has resolved it. Now, it turns out that this guy who was at the top of the mountain would have to have been seen, at least know that there was a human form there, know that there was a shadow of his shadow. And if that's the case, then you can believe him. But otherwise, he wouldn't be believed. Vidilma tsarahavai. But wait, maybe it was a woman. And maybe the woman, in other words, again, if you hear a voice, maybe it's a woman. If it's a woman, maybe you have to be concerned that she is the rival wife or all those other 5 women that are not believed. So Tana debe Rabbi Ishmael, b'shat sakana kotvim v'notznin af al pi she'em mekirim. So the Tana of Rabbi Ishmael says it was talking. Okay, so now this is something different entirely. He says, how do we know that you don't have to worry about that? He says, because there's a case, okay, this is a totally different case, but we're going to compare it in a minute. There was a time of sakana. Okay, what does it mean? It's shat sakana. Often it means where people are trying to kill us. That's not what it means here. Here it means it's talking about a case in Gittin where a guy fell into a pit and it was danger. His life was endangered. Now it's interesting. We talk about this at the end of Masechet Yevamot. Okay, they're going to talk about this a lot in Gittin, and you would have expected to see more of it in Yevamot, where there were many people on their deathbed. They basically wanted to give their wives a get because they didn't want their wives to fall to yibum to the brother-in-law. So in order to avoid it, they would give them a get right before they died. So, and then they'd be divorced and they wouldn't be the widow of, right? They'd be a divorcee of, rather than a widow of their husband who had no children, and then they would have to do yibum, right? You can imagine someone dying and thinking either to protect the wife because the wife didn't want to do yibum, or for his own sake thinking, I don't want my wife to marry my brother. That's just weird. And therefore, but probably really trying to save her and to allow her to be free to do whatever she wants, marry anyone she wants to marry. So what would they do? So in this case, he falls into a pit and he screams out, I am so-and-so, right? Obviously it would I was thinking that, I wasn't going to say it, but yes, it would obviously mess her up to marry a Kohen by being a divorcee. Okay, but at least she doesn't have to do yibum and be stuck until, maybe he also knows his brother's not going to do yibum or chalitza. That's another motivation he could have. So in any case, or maybe the brother's far away, there could be all sorts of situations. The brother's very young, all reasons why a husband would want to do this. So in any case, what happened? He screams from the bore, I am so-and-so, the son of so-and-so. Please write a get to my wife, so-and-so, the daughter of so-and-so, because, I'm about to die. So now, kotvim v'notznin af al pi she'em mekirim. Even though they don't recognize, they give the get. They write the get, they give the get based on his voice. So now they say, just like that's the shat sakana, here is another shat sakana, basically, because the woman will be an aguna if we don't allow her to go by this testimony. So again, the guy, we don't know where he is, and we have someone whose voice, we hear a voice saying that it's this person. We don't have to worry that maybe it's her rival wife trying to mess up her life, because we're in dire straits here. We have to just fix the situation. If we know it's the rival wife, we have no choice, but we don't have to be concerned. Maybe it's the rival wife. Okay, last Mishna for today, Mishna and a small section of the Gemara. And now we're going to get a little bit of history. Maybe in the end, we'll kind of try to think about why we're getting the history here, why that's important. It's not like they generally talk about history in the Mishna. So before we even get to our Mishnah, I want to talk about something previously that we learned about. First of all, part of this Mishnah we already learned. It was quoted recently. And the other thing to remember is, if you recall, there was a machloket Beit Shammai Beit Hillel about whether there was a case that happened. If you remember, 10 people went out to cut in the fields, and the wife was there, and one guy got killed, and the others didn't see anything. Only the wife saw. She came back and testified. They went back, checked out that it was really true he was dead. And based on that, they said, Beit Shammai said, right, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, they both agreed we can accept a woman's testimony about her husband. That was the first step. Okay, you have to remember how this happened. First, it was just the wife about her husband. And then there was a debate with Shammai Beit Hillel. Is it only if it had all the same details? Remember, it had to be in the same place. It had to be in the same province. It had to be in the same type of thing they were harvesting. All that. That's what Beit Hillel said. Beit Shammai said no, any case. And Beit Hillel in the end is convinced with Beit Shammai. So the first stage was that they permitted a woman about her own husband. Then, apparently, we're going to see more developments. So, Amar Rabbi Akiva, when I went to Nahar Dea to do the Ibor Shana to decide that we're going to add another Adar, why in Nahar Dea are supposed to do it in Israel? So some of the commentaries say that it was apparently the Romans were, not allowing the Jews to do it in Israel, so they went to Babylonia to do it. Matzati Nechemi Ish Beit Li. Some people say Beit Li, it means he was a person of importance. Okay, the Rambam quotes him in the Perush HaMishnah. When his Hakdama la Perush HaMishnah, he quotes him and he talks about how some people are only mentioned once in the Mishnah, and he's one of them. And it's interesting that this is the one thing, because this is a pretty big thing to go down in history as having done. So he said, Amar li shamati she'emasi initai shaba eretz Yisrael apiyed echad el Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Remember this? He said, I heard that in Israel, the only person they allow to do this is Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. V'numeti lo, and Rabbi Akiva said to him, Ken advarim, you're right. It's true. Amar li, emor lahem mishmi. So he said to him, this Nehemiah Ish Beit Eli from Babylonia says to them, says to Rabbi Akiva, tell them in my name, remember there's all these people, armies around. So again, there were different ways to explain it. In the end, we concluded it probably means, and therefore I can't get to Israel to go tell you this. But Mikublani, Rabban Gamliel Azaken, I want you to know the Rabban Gamliel, the elder, that's not the usual Rabban Gamliel we talk about. Soon we'll see the regular Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel, the elder, I have a tradition from him. He's trying to say there was an earlier tradition that we could accept one witness. Okay, so we have Beit Shammai Beit Hillel accepting women about their own husbands, the wife herself. Then he says, right, no one was doing this in their day except Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, but he says, before you, Rabban Gamliel, in between Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai, and this Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, there was Rabban Gamliel Zaken who also permitted this. Comes Rabbi Akiva and he continues the story, and he says, Rabban Gamliel, the younger, right, when I told Rabban Gamliel, he's the famous one in the story, he was kicked out of being the head of the yeshiva. When I said to him, Samach lidvarai, he was very happy with what I said, Ba'amal. He said two things. First, he says, Matzanu chaver Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Now we have someone to support Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, and great, now we can push this agenda forward. And not only that, but mitoch hadavar nizkar Rabban Gamliel. All of a sudden, he remembered something about his Rabban Gamliel, the elder. Shnergu harugim betel arza. You see, Rabban Gamliel Zaken neshotehen al pi ed echad. He remembered hearing this story that there were people in Tel Arza that had died, and I guess it was unclear who exactly had died. And Rabban Gamliel had permitted their wives to get married based on the testimony of one witness. This is the Yavne generation where the Sanhedrin moved to Yavne after the destruction. And in Yavne, they decide right now, right? That's why he's often called Rabban Gamliel de Yavne. And Rabban Gamliel pushes this through, and he says, we're now going to allow one witness. Now we get, and not only that, aid mipi, okay, they aid mipi aid, even hearsay evidence, aid mipi eved, okay, from a slave, mipi isha, from a woman, and mipi shifcha, and from a shifcha. You're saying your Gemara doesn't say Rabban Gamliel Zaken. It's in the notes that it's supposed to say that, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So there's a little gimel there, which sends you to the Hagahot Tzionim, okay, which says it really should say Rabban Gamliel Zaken, and that's where you find in the Mishnayot it says it, and you can look in the commentaries on the Mishna. So there's a bit of a girsa issue here. Okay, when it says that the story of Tel Arza, some texts just say Rabban Gamliel, but it doesn't make any sense. It's not like Rabban Gamliel would remember what he did. So obviously he remembered, or having heard what his grandfather did. I think it was his grandfather. Could be great-grandfather. I don't remember all the genealogy. Now we get something strange, but it's going to be clear that this is talking about previously. Before they decided in Yavne, what the story is, there was a debate. So here's the debate. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Amrim, Emasin Shal Pied Echad. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua basically said, you cannot marry based on one witness. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Lo Pi Isha, Lo Pi Eved, Lo Pi Shifcha, Lo Pi Krovim. He did allow one witness, but only a kosher witness, not a woman, not a slave, not relatives. Okay, he said one witness, yes, there has to be a man and a kosher male witness. Okay, so that's what was going on before they permitted it. After they permitted it, then again, it's already said clearly in the Mishnah, everything was permitted. And then at that point, the Beit Din had decided everyone had to agree with that. So now the Gemara is going to say, wait a minute. V'sava Rabbi Akiva al pi shalo. Rabbi Akiva didn't allow a woman right before. What about this? V'atanya, it says in a Braita. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar omer mishum Rabbi Akiva, isha ne'emenet lavi gita mikav v'chomer. Says nothing to do with our case, but you'll see a mention of it. Okay. First off, in Masechet Gitin, we're going to learn that if you bring a get from abroad, you have to say, and the question is going to be what's abroad and all that, but you have to say, someone who brings the get has to testify about the legitimacy of the get. Get into all the details there. I don't want to get into it now. But a woman can be the one who says, in front of me it was signed, in front of me it was written, actually the opposite, in front of me it was written, in front of me it was signed, she can be the one to do it to her own get. Okay, now, so now they say the following. Since women, okay, so again, he said, Isha, a woman, any woman is ne'emenet, right? A woman can bring her own get from a kavachomer. Why? From our case. We actually made mention of this the other day. The 5 women who we don't believe, remember? Among them, right? That's Sarah, the Yevamot, the mother-in-law, all those. So of those 5 women who are not believed to say someone's husband has died, they are believed to bring that same woman's get and say she's divorced and this was, right? They bring the get in their hand and they say, this was written in front of me, this was signed in front of me. Why? They can do that because, remember we said the other day, what's the difference? Because they have a get in hand, right? They have something written, therefore they're believed. So they're not believed when it comes to Edud Isha, but they are believed to bring the get. So now they say, Zoshan at minute Lomar Meit Ba'ala. So Rabbi Akiva says, again, this was said in the name of Rabbi Akiva. So she who says that her husband died and is believed, remember, earlier already, Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai, everyone agrees that a woman herself is believed about her own get. So if she's believed about her own husband dying, she's believed about her husband dying, and these other women are not believed about their husband dying, and those women are believed to bring the get and say it was signed and it was written and signed in front of me, then obviously this woman who we believe to say my husband died is obviously going to be believed to Enodin Shne'emenet Lavi Gita. She's believed about her own get. So from a Kal V'chomer, we can learn that. What does this have to do with anything? Well, notice he has 2 categories. One is 5 women who are not believed to say a husband died versus the woman herself whose husband it is. He doesn't talk about women in general, but it's obvious when he says there's only 5 women who aren't believed to say a husband died, then obviously all other women are believed. So, Nashim Shamru Chachamim, Hu de lo mehemne. It's only those people who aren't believed. But Isha Ba'alma, a regular woman, mehemne, should be believed, right? Would definitely be believed. That's what he's saying here. So, how could he say in our Mishna that we don't believe a woman to be a witness? Seems very clear he does, other than those 5 women. To which the Gemara answers, Lo kasha, kan kodim shechziku, kan lachar shechziku. That was again said all before they made this takana. This was said after they made the takana. So our Mishnah, when it said that Rabbi Akiva didn't allow that, that was an earlier time period. When it says here that he did allow other than those 5 women, that was talking about after they decided in Yavne to change the law. Okay, with that, we're going to finish for today, but I want to end with one idea. It's a very important idea. Why is the Mishnah telling us history here? Why does it matter, history? So I think it's really sending a very important message. We're talking about a very sensitive topic, aguna, which is unfortunately in our day still a very sensitive topic, right? Where aguna, again, could be, number one, someone whose husband is missing in action. Where here it's clear that we go and try to do everything that we possibly can. But there's also a different type of aguna, which is from a get case, right? Where a husband won't give his wife a get. And we unfortunately know many situations like that, also some in the reverse. But the main problem going on nowadays is really with, and has been going on for years really, is women who can't get a get, and whose husbands abuse their privilege of, their place. Anyway, what I want to show here, I think is really important, is that they're telling us history because they're showing us how in the beginning, right, they didn't understand the need for this. Then a case happened and then they realized the need. And as the need grew, they basically tried coming up with more ways that we could accept testimony to permit this woman. And you see how things change and how people try to come up with ways to do it. And I'll end today's shiur with the hope that over the upcoming years, there's a lot of people trying to resolve the aguna situation. And the hope is that they will find ways, right, even though we're many generations later, and these ways haven't yet been found, but there is always an interest. And nowadays, particularly, there's a big push toward trying to come up with solutions. And my hope is that the same way they came up with solutions here, that they come up with solutions and help resolve some of these issues in a way that's, also under consensus and all that, which also obviously creates more complications, who agrees with whose decisions, etc. Unfortunately, we know a lot of situations like that. And with that, we are close to the end. See you all at the Siyum, and Mazal Tov in advance for finishing. Have a great day.